Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Council station, watching the swirling nebula beyond. Her 7-year-old daughter Emma pressed her small face against the reinforced glass, her breath fogging the surface as she pointed excitedly at the colorful gas clouds. "Mommy, look, it's like a rainbow in space." Emma's voice carried that pure wonder only children possessed. Sarah smiled, placing a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. Being Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council had been the opportunity of a lifetime, but it meant bringing Emma far from home. The Council had assured her that the station was safe, that families were welcome. After 3 years of careful negotiations, humanity was finally close to achieving full membership in the galactic community. The station buzzed with activity. Tall crystalline Vorthak delegates glided through the corridors on their anti-grav platforms. The insectoid Zephyrians clicked and chittered in their complex language. The aquatic Delphini moved through water-filled tubes that ran alongside the main walkways. Emma had grown up among these beings, speaking bits of their languages, treating their differences as normal as breathing. "Ambassador Chen, the council session begins in 1 hour," announced Arya. "The station's AI through the communication panel." Sarah nodded. Today was crucial. The final vote on humanity's admission to the council. 3 years of proving that Earth deserved a seat among the stars. 3 years of showing that humans could be trusted, that they were evolved beyond their warlike past. She knelt beside Emma. "I have to go to the big meeting now. Sweetheart, Mrs. Corville will take you to the education center." Emma hugged her tightly. "Will we go home to Earth after your meeting?" "Maybe soon, baby. Maybe very soon." The council chamber was a magnificent sphere, with delegates arranged in concentric circles around the central speaking platform. Sarah took her place in the petitioners section, her heart racing. Senator Thexon of the Dominion Alliance called the session to order, his forearms gesturing in the traditional opening ritual. "Today we decide the fate of the humans' application," his translator rendered his words into standard Galactic. "The final vote on Species 2847C's admission to the Council." Sarah had learned to hate that designation. Humans weren't even worthy of their species' name in official documents. They were just another numbered application in the Council's files. The debate began with familiar arguments. The Altarian representative praised humanity's scientific achievements and cultural diversity. The Centauri delegate emphasized Earth's strategic location and resource potential. But the hegemony faction, led by the reptilian Saurians, raised the same objections they had for 3 years. "The humans are too violent," hissed Council Prime Sethk, his forked tongue flicking between words. "Their history is written in blood. Wars, genocide, destruction of their own planet's environment. They are not ready for galactic civilization." Sarah stood when recognized. "Honored delegates, humanity has evolved. We've had global peace for 2 decades. Our environmental restoration projects have revitalized Earth's ecosystems. We've shown we can change." "Pretty words," Sethek replied. "But what happens when you face real pressure? When your interests conflict with others? Will you revert to your violent nature?" The debate continued for hours. Sarah presented evidence, testimonials, cultural exchanges. Some delegates seemed swayed, others remained hostile. The vote would be close, perhaps decided by a handful of swing delegates. During a recess, Sarah stepped outside for air. The station's artificial atmosphere was perfectly regulated, but she needed a moment to think. Her wrist communicator chimed. A message from Mrs. Corville at the Education Center. "Ambassador, please call immediately. It's about Emma." Sarah's blood went cold. She tried calling back, but the line was busy. Then another message, this one from Station Security. "Report to Medical Bay 7 immediately." The corridor seemed endless as Sarah ran. Her dress shoes clicked against the metal floor, each step echoing her growing panic. Medical Bay 7 was in the residential section, near the Education Center. Why would Emma be there? She burst through the medical bay doors to find chaos. Dr. Zeltar, the station's chief medical officer, stood over a biobed. Sarah could see small feet extending beyond a privacy screen. "Emma!" She rushed forward, but Dr. Zeltar's assistant held her back. "Ambassador, please. Let the doctor work." Sarah could see her daughter now, pale and still on the biobed. Tubes and monitoring equipment surrounded her small form. The readouts showed critical levels across multiple systems. "What happened?" Sarah's voice cracked. Dr. Zeltar's tentacles moved across his instruments with practiced precision. "Poison. a neurotoxin introduced to her food at the education center. We're doing everything we can, but what? The toxin is synthetic, designed specifically to target human nervous systems. Someone who knew human biology very well created this. Sarah felt the world spinning. This wasn't an accident. Someone had deliberately poisoned her daughter. Who would do this? Station Security Chief Morvac arrived, his blue-skinned features grim. We're investigating, Ambassador. The education center's food preparation area has been sealed. We're questioning all staff. She's just a child, Sarah whispered, taking Emma's hand. So small and cold. The monitors showed Emma's vital signs declining despite Dr. Zeltar's efforts. The neurotoxin was shutting down her nervous system piece by piece. Her breathing became more labored. There is an antidote, Dr. Zeltar said quietly, but it requires Tyrellian crystal extract. We have none on the station, and the nearest source is 4 days away at best. Sarah felt hope flicker. Then get it. Send the fastest ship you have. Ambassador! Chief Morvac's voice was gentle but firm. According to our medical projections, your daughter has perhaps 6 hours remaining. I'm sorry. The room fell silent except for the beeping of Emma's monitors. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand, willing her to fight, to hold on. But she could see the truth in the medical readouts. Emma was dying, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Mommy? Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Her eyes fluttered open. I'm here, baby. Mommy's here. Are we going home now? Sarah choked back tears. Yes, sweetheart. We're going home. Emma smiled weakly and closed her eyes. The monitors showed her slipping away, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat. Sarah held her daughter's hand and watched the Galactic Council's first human victim fade into the dark. Emma Chen died at Oro 347 station time, her small hand still clutched in her mother's grip. The medical bay fell silent except for the flat tone of the life support monitor. Dr. Zeltar's tentacles stopped moving across his instruments. Even Chief Morvac's usual professional composure cracked. Sarah didn't cry. She couldn't. The grief was too vast, too crushing for tears. She simply sat beside her daughter's body, stroking Emma's hair, whispering the lullabies she'd sung since Emma was a baby. Ambassador, Dr. Zeltar said softly, I'm truly sorry. If there had been any way, Sarah looked up at him with empty eyes. Who made the poison? The toxin analysis shows extremely sophisticated knowledge of human neurology. This wasn't random violence. Someone studied our species specifically to create this weapon. Chief Morvac cleared his throat. Ambassador, I need to inform you that the council session has been postponed pending our investigation. The delegates are concerned about this incident. Concerned. Sarah's voice was flat. My daughter is dead and they're concerned. She stood slowly, her legs unsteady. I want to see the investigation files. Everything you have. Ambassador, that's not possible. Ongoing investigation protocols. My daughter was murdered by someone on this station. Sarah's voice carried a new edge, something cold and sharp. I want answers. Morvac and Dr. Zeltar exchanged glances. Perhaps you should contact Earth, inform your government of this tragedy. The council will undoubtedly want to discuss compensation. Compensation? The word came out like a slap. You think money will bring Emma back? Sarah walked to the communication terminal in the corner of the medical bay. Her fingers moved automatically across the interface, establishing a priority channel to Earth. The signal would take 12 hours to reach home, another 12 for a response. But she knew exactly who to call. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Admiral Janet Reeves, director of Earth's Interstellar Affairs Division, the woman who had personally selected Sarah for this assignment. Janet, it's Sarah, Priority Alpha message. Someone on the Galactic Council station murdered Emma. She transmitted the medical files, the toxin analysis, everything Dr. Zeltar had shared. Then she sat back and waited. The hours passed in a blur. Council delegates came to offer condolences, their alien features arranged in approximations of sympathy. Sarah received them all with the same cold politeness, filing away every word, every expression, every tell. Senator Thexon arrived with a formal delegation. Ambassador Chen, the Council extends its deepest sympathies for your loss. This unprecedented tragedy. Unprecedented? Sarah interrupted. You mean this is the first time someone has murdered a human child on your station? How comforting. We are doing everything possible to find the perpetrator. The investigation has our highest priority. And the vote on humanity's admission? Texan's forearms gestured uncomfortably. Given the circumstances, perhaps it would be best to postpone indefinitely. Until this matter is resolved. Sarah felt something crystallize inside her chest. I see. My daughter's murder is convenient timing for those who opposed our membership. Ambassador, please. No one could have anticipated. Get out. Her voice cut through his diplomatic protests. All of you, get out. After they left, Sarah sat alone with Emma's body. The medical bay's lights had been dimmed to half power, casting long shadows across the sterile surfaces. She pulled up the station's personnel files on the terminal, cross-referencing everyone who had access to the education center's food preparation area. The list was longer than she'd hoped, 37 beings from a dozen different species, but the toxin analysis narrowed it down. Only someone with access to advanced biochemical equipment could have synthesized the neurotoxin. That limited it to the science staff and medical personnel. Dr. Zeltar was on the list, but Sarah dismissed him immediately. His efforts to save Emma had been genuine. The 3 other medical staff were possibilities, but the timing didn't work. They'd all been in surgery when Emma was poisoned. That left the science division. Sarah pulled up their files, studying each face, each background. Most were career researchers, decades of service, clean records. But one stood out, Dr. Isthak, a Saurian biochemist, assigned to the station 6 months ago. His research focused on comparative neurology across species. He had both the knowledge and the access to create the toxin. More importantly, he was from the same world as Council Prime Sethk, the most vocal opponent of human membership. Sarah's communicator chimed. Admiral Reeves's response had arrived early, transmitted through military priority channels. Sarah, I'm sending help. Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Webb, Force Recon Marines. Best investigator we have. He'll arrive in 48 hours aboard the UES Retribution. Hold tight. We're going to get answers. The message included Webb's service record. Sarah scrolled through pages of commendations, successful missions, classified operations. This wasn't just an investigator. This was someone who found people who didn't want to be found and made them talk. But 48 hours felt like an eternity. Sarah returned to the personnel files, building a timeline of Dr. Yisthak's activities. His laboratory access log showed he'd been working late the night before Emma was poisoned. Security footage showed him near the education center that morning. She tried to access his research files, but they were encrypted with Saurian military-grade security. That was interesting. Civilian scientists didn't typically have access to military encryption protocols. Ambassador Chen? Dr. Zeltar had returned, his expression apologetic. I need to. The medical examination is complete. Your daughter's body will need to be prepared for transport to Earth. Sarah nodded without looking away from the screen. Doctor, the neurotoxin. How long would it take to synthesize? With the proper equipment and knowledge, perhaps 6 hours. And how many beings on this station have that capability? Dr. Zeltar's tentacles writhed uncomfortably. In theory, 5, perhaps 6. But Ambassador, you shouldn't be conducting your own investigation. Security Chief Morvac has extensive resources. Morvac has politics to consider. I don't. Sarah saved the files to a secure partition. Someone on this station murdered my 7-year-old daughter to prevent humanity from joining the Galactic Council. They succeeded. Emma is dead, and our membership application will be buried in committee for the next decade. Surely you don't believe. I believe someone thought killing a human child was an acceptable cost for maintaining the status quo. Sarah stood and faced him. Doctor, in your professional opinion, was Emma's death quick? Dr. Zeltar's silence was answer enough. The neurotoxin shut down her nervous system slowly. She was aware as her body failed. She asked me if we were going home. Sarah's voice remained steady, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. Whoever did this wanted her to suffer. They wanted me to watch her die. She walked to Emma's body, covered now with a sheet. They got their wish. But they're about to learn something about human nature that didn't make it into our cultural exchange files. The communication terminal chimed again. Another message from Earth, this one from the President himself. Sarah, you have our full support. Find who did this. Justice will be served. Attached was a single line of authorization. By presidential directive, UE's Retribution is authorized to use any means necessary to investigate the murder of Emma Chen and ensure appropriate consequences. Sarah smiled for the first time since Emma died. It wasn't a pleasant expression. The Galactic Council was about to discover why humanity had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. Emma Chen died at 0347 station time, her small hand still clutched in her mother's grip. The medical bay fell silent except for the flat tone of the life support monitor. Dr. Zeltar's tentacles stopped moving across his instruments. Even Chief Morvac's usual professional composure cracked. Sarah didn't cry. She couldn't. The grief was too vast, too crushing for tears. She simply sat beside her daughter's body, stroking Emma's hair, whispering the lullabies she'd sung since Emma was a baby. "Ambassador," Dr. Zeltar said softly, "I'm truly sorry. If there had been any way." Sarah looked up at him with empty eyes. "Who made the poison?" The toxin analysis shows extremely sophisticated knowledge of human neurology. This wasn't random violence. Someone studied our species specifically to create this weapon. Chief Morvac cleared his throat. "Ambassador, I need to inform you that the council session has been postponed pending our investigation. The delegates are concerned about this incident." "Concerned?" Sarah's voice was flat. "My daughter is dead and they're concerned." She stood slowly, her legs unsteady. "I want to see the investigation files. Everything you have." "Ambassador, that's not possible. Ongoing investigation protocols." "My daughter was murdered by someone on this station." Sarah's voice carried a new edge, something cold and sharp. "I want answers." Morvac and Dr. Zeltar exchanged glances. "Perhaps you should contact Earth, inform your government of this tragedy. The council will undoubtedly want to discuss compensation." "Compensation?" The word came out like a slap. "You think money will bring Emma back?" Sarah walked to the communication terminal in the corner of the medical bay. Her fingers moved automatically across the interface, establishing a priority channel to Earth. The signal would take 12 hours to reach home, another 12 for a response. But she knew exactly who to call. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Admiral Janet Reeves, Director of Earth's Interstellar Affairs Division, the woman who had personally selected Sarah for this assignment. "Janet, it's Sarah. Priority Alpha message. Someone on the Galactic Council station murdered Emma." She transmitted the medical files, the toxin analysis, everything Dr. Zeltar had shared. Then she sat back and waited. The hours passed in a blur. Council delegates came to offer condolences, their alien features arranged in approximations of sympathy. Sarah received them all with the same cold politeness, filing away every word, every expression, every tell. Senator Thexon arrived with a formal delegation. "Ambassador Chen, the Council extends its deepest sympathies for your loss. This unprecedented tragedy, unprecedented?" Sarah interrupted. "You mean this is the first time someone has murdered a human child on your station? How comforting. We are doing everything possible to find the perpetrator. The investigation has our highest priority." "And the vote on humanity's admission?" Thexon's forearms gestured uncomfortably. "Given the circumstances, perhaps it would be best to postpone indefinitely. Until this matter is resolved." Sarah felt something crystallize inside her chest. "I see. My daughter's murder is convenient timing for those who opposed our membership. Ambassador, please. No one could have anticipated. Get out." Her voice cut through his diplomatic protests. "All of you, get out." After they left, Sarah sat alone with Emma's body. The medical bay's lights had been dimmed to half power, casting long shadows across the sterile surfaces. She pulled up the station's personnel files on the terminal, cross-referencing everyone who had access to the education center's food preparation area. The list was longer than she'd hoped. 37 beings from a dozen different species, but the toxin analysis narrowed it down. Only someone with access to advanced biochemical equipment could have synthesized the neurotoxin. That limited it to the science staff and medical personnel. Dr. Zeltar was on the list, but Sarah dismissed him immediately. His efforts to save Emma had been genuine. The 3 other medical staff were possibilities, but the timing didn't work. They'd all been in surgery when Emma was poisoned. That left the science division. Sarah pulled up their files, studying each face, each background. Most were career researchers, decades of service, clean records. But one stood out, Dr. Isthak, a Saurian biochemist. Assigned to the station 6 months ago. His research focused on comparative neurology across species. He had both the knowledge and the access to create the toxin. More importantly, he was from the same world as Council Prime Sethik, the most vocal opponent of human membership. Sarah's communicator chimed. Admiral Reeves's response had arrived early, transmitted through military priority channels. Sarah, I'm sending help. Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Webb, Force Recon Marines. Best investigator we have. He'll arrive in 48 hours aboard the UES Retribution. Hold tight. We're going to get answers. The message included Webb's service record. Sarah scrolled through pages of commendations, successful missions, classified operations. This wasn't just an investigator. This was someone who found people who didn't want to be found and made them talk. But 48 hours felt like an eternity. Sarah returned to the personnel files, building a timeline of Dr. Yisithak's activities. His laboratory access log showed he'd been working late the night before Emma was poisoned. Security footage showed him near the education center that morning. She tried to access his research files, but they were encrypted with Saurian military-grade security. That was interesting. Civilian scientists didn't typically have access to military encryption protocols. Ambassador Chen, Dr. Zelter had returned, his expression apologetic. I need to. The medical examination is complete. Your daughter's body will need to be prepared for transport to Earth. Sarah nodded without looking away from the screen. Doctor, the neurotoxin. How long would it take to synthesize? With the proper equipment and knowledge? Perhaps 6 hours. And how many beings on this station have that capability? Dr. Zeltar's tentacles writhed uncomfortably. In theory? 5, perhaps 6. But Ambassador, you shouldn't be conducting your own investigation. Security Chief Morvac has extensive resources. Morvac has politics to consider. I don't? Sarah saved the files to a secure partition. Someone on this station murdered my 7-year-old daughter to prevent humanity from joining the Galactic Council. They succeeded. Emma is dead, and our membership application will be buried in committee for the next decade. Surely you don't believe. I believe someone thought killing a human child was an acceptable cost for maintaining the status quo. Sarah stood and faced him. Doctor, in your professional opinion, was Emma's death quick? Dr. Zeltar's silence was answer enough. The neurotoxin shut down her nervous system slowly. She was aware as her body failed. She asked me if we were going home. Sarah's voice remained steady, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. Whoever did this wanted her to suffer. They wanted me to watch her die. She walked to Emma's body, covered now with a sheet. They got their wish. But they're about to learn something about human nature that didn't make it into our cultural exchange files. The communication terminal chimed again. Another message from Earth, this one from the President himself. Sarah, you have our full support. Find who did this. Justice will be served. Attached was a single line of authorization. By presidential directive, UES Retribution is authorized to use any means necessary to investigate the murder of Emma Chen and ensure appropriate consequences. Sarah smiled for the first time since Emma died. It wasn't a pleasant expression. The Galactic Council was about to discover why humanity had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. Webb pulled out a small device from his kit and began taking readings from the synthesis equipment. Dr. Yisithak watched nervously, his claws clicking against the metal workbench. Interesting readings, Webb said after a few minutes. Your equipment shows traces of several synthetic compounds. Some of them match components found in the neurotoxin that killed Emma Chen. That proves nothing, Dr. Yisithak hissed. Many compounds share similar molecular structures. Correlation is not causation. True, but combined with your access to the education center, your expertise in human neurology, and your personal connection to Council Prime Sethk, it starts to paint a picture. Dr. Yisithak's membrane flicked again. What connection to Council Prime? We are both Saurian, but that means nothing. Webb consulted his tablet. According to your personnel file, you served in the Saurian Military Intelligence Corps before becoming a civilian scientist. Council Prime Sethk was your commanding officer for 3 years. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just murder. It was a military operation. That was long ago, Dr. Yisithak protested. Ancient history. Ancient enough that you forgot to mention it in your station application. Webb moved closer, his voice remaining conversational. Doctor, let me tell you what I think happened. You were ordered to create a toxin specifically designed to kill human children. You synthesized it here in your lab, then found a way to introduce it into Emma's food. The goal wasn't just murder. It was to derail humanity's admission to the Council. You cannot prove any of this. Maybe not yet. But here's what's going to happen. I'm sealing this lab as a crime scene. Every piece of equipment will be analyzed by human forensic specialists. Every compound will be tested. Every data file will be examined. Webb's smile turned predatory. And Doctor, my people are very good at finding things that were meant to stay hidden. Dr. Isthak's scales were now visibly agitated. You have no jurisdiction here. This is Council territory. Article 15, Sarah said quietly. He has full investigative authority. Webb nodded. The treaty your government signed gives me the right to investigate crimes against human citizens. That includes sealing evidence and questioning suspects. He activated his communicator. Retribution, this is Webb. I need a forensic team down here immediately. You cannot do this. Dr. Isithak moved toward his workstation, but Webb stepped smoothly into his path. Doctor, I strongly suggest you don't touch anything else. Tampering with evidence is a serious crime under Galactic law. The lab door opened and 3 figures in black uniforms entered. They moved with the same predatory grace as Webb, and Sarah realized these weren't just forensic specialists, they were Marines. Secure the scene, Webb ordered. Full spectrum analysis on everything. I want to know every molecule that's been synthesized in this lab for the past month. As the Marines began setting up their equipment, Dr. Isthak backed toward the wall. This is harassment. I demand to speak with Council Prime Sethk. Interesting, Webb said. Most people would demand to speak with a lawyer or their embassy. You want to talk to your old commanding officer. Sarah watched the Saurian's reaction. His pupils dilated further, and his breathing became rapid. He was terrified, but not of Webb. He was terrified of what Sethk would do if this investigation continued. Dr. Isithak, Sarah said, stepping forward. I want you to look at me. The Saurian's gaze reluctantly met hers. My daughter was 7 years old. She liked to draw pictures of the nebula outside the observation deck. She was learning to speak Zephyrian because she thought their language sounded like music. She asked me every day when we could go home to Earth. Sarah's voice remained steady, but her eyes were ice. Whoever killed her destroyed the most innocent thing in my universe. If you know anything about her murder, now is the time to speak. Dr. Isithak's gaze flickered to the Marines, then to Webb, then back to Sarah. I cannot. Can't what? Webb asked. Can't tell the truth? Can't face what you've done? Or can't betray whoever ordered you to murder a child? You don't understand, Doctor. Isthak burst out. The humans are a threat to galactic stability. Your species is too violent, too unpredictable. Council Prime Sethk was protecting civilization itself. The lab fell silent. Sarah felt the admission hit her like a physical blow. Webb, however, seemed unsurprised. So you admit you killed Emma Chen on Sethk's orders? Dr. Isthak realized what he'd said and pressed himself against the wall. I admit nothing. Those words were taken out of context. Were they? One of the Marines looked up from his analysis equipment. Because I'm getting clear readings for synthetic neurotoxin residue on 3 different synthesis chambers. This lab definitely produced the poison that killed the ambassador's daughter. Webb nodded. Dr. Isithak, you're under arrest for the murder of Emma Chen. You have the right to legal representation under Galactic law. Wait, Dr. Isithak held up his claws. You cannot arrest me. I have diplomatic immunity. Doctor, immunity protects diplomats from prosecution for their official duties. Murder isn't an official duty. Webb gestured to his Marines. Secure him. No, you don't understand what you're doing. If you arrest me, Council Prime Sethk will what? Webb stepped closer. Will order more children murdered? Will threaten Earth? What exactly will he do, Doctor? Doctor, Isithak's courage finally broke. He will destroy your species. The Saurian Empire has fleets that could burn your homeworld to ash. You are making a terrible mistake. The only mistake, Sarah said coldly, was thinking you could murder my daughter without consequences. Webb's communicator chimed. Sergeant, this is Colonel Harrison aboard Retribution. We've intercepted some interesting communications between this station and Saurus Prime. You need to see this. On my way. Webb turned to his Marines. Transport Dr. Yisthak to the Retribution for processing. Full security protocols. As the Marines escorted the protesting Saurian out of the lab, Sarah felt something shift inside her chest. The grief was still there, overwhelming and raw, but now it had company. Now there was purpose. What's next? She asked Webb. Next, we go after the person who ordered your daughter's murder. Webb's expression was grim. Council Prime Sethek made a fundamental error in judgment. What's that? He assumed humans would accept the murder of a child as the cost of doing business in galactic politics. Webb headed for the door. He's about to learn how wrong he was. They walked through the station corridors in silence, passing groups of alien delegates who watched them with obvious concern. Word was spreading quickly through the diplomatic community. Humans had arrested a Saurian scientist for murder, and the implications were staggering. At the docking bay, they found Dr. Isathak being loaded into the Retribution's shuttle under heavy guard. His scales had gone pale with terror. Ambassador Chen, he called out as he saw her. Please, you must understand, I was following orders. I had no choice. Sarah stopped beside the shuttle and looked up at him. Dr. Isathak, my daughter's last words were asking if we were going home. She died confused and afraid, poisoned by someone she trusted. Her voice carried across the docking bay. You had a choice. You chose to murder a child. As the shuttle departed for the Retribution, Sarah felt the weight of dozens of alien gazes. Representatives from across the galaxy had witnessed a human arrest one of their own for the murder of a child. The political ramifications would be enormous. Ambassador, Webb said quietly, you should know that this is just the beginning. Dr. Isthak was a tool. Council Prime Sethk is the real target. Can you prove his involvement? The communications intercepts Colonel Harrison mentioned should help, but even if we can prove Sethek ordered the murder, arresting him will be complicated. He has real diplomatic immunity as head of the Saurian delegation. Sarah looked out at the stars beyond the docking bay's force field. Sergeant, what would happen if a foreign agent murdered an American child on U.S. soil? We'd hunt them to the ends of the earth. Then let's go hunting. Webb smiled, and this time there was nothing frightening about it. It was the smile of someone who had found a kindred spirit. Yes, ma'am. Time to show the Galactic Council what happens when you mess with humanity's children. Aboard the UES Retribution, Sarah found herself in the ship's intelligence center, surrounded by displays showing intercepted communications and data streams. Colonel Harrison, the ship's commanding officer, was a tall woman with silver hair and the bearing of someone who had spent decades making difficult decisions. Ambassador, Sergeant Webb, Colonel Harrison nodded as they entered. What we've discovered is going to change everything. She activated the main display, showing a communication intercept dated 3 days before Emma's death. The text was in Saurian military cipher, but the translation scrolled alongside. Operation Severance authorized. Target, human diplomatic offspring. Method, biochemical termination. Objective, permanent dissolution of human membership application. Authorization, Council Prime Sethk, Saurian High Command. Sarah felt her knees go weak. Seeing it in writing made it real in a way that Dr. Yisthak's confession hadn't. They had planned Emma's murder weeks in advance. There's more, Colonel Harrison continued. Follow-up communications after the murder show. They're planning to blame human retaliation for future security incidents. They want to paint Earth as a violent species that threatens galactic peace. Webb studied the communications log. Classic false flag operation. Murder our children, then use our response to justify excluding us from the council permanently. How many people know about this? Sarah asked. On the Saurian side, based on the communication patterns, at least a dozen high-ranking officials. On our side, just us and Admiral Reeves back on Earth. Sarah absorbed this information. Colonel, what are Earth's options here? Officially, we lodge a formal protest, demand Sethek's extradition, and spend the next decade arguing about jurisdiction while he remains free. And unofficially, Colonel Harrison and Webb exchange glances. Ambassador, there are certain provisions in military law for protecting American citizens from state-sponsored terrorism. Emma was murdered by a foreign government to influence U.S. diplomatic policy. You're talking about retaliation. I'm talking about justice, Webb said firmly. Ma'am, Council Prime Sethek ordered the murder of a 7-year-old girl to score political points. In my world, that makes him a legitimate target. The ship's communication system chimed. Colonel Harrison, priority message from Earth Command. The main display switched to show Admiral Reeves, her expression grim. Colonel, the President has reviewed your intelligence package. You are hereby authorized to use any means necessary to secure justice for Emma Chen. The gloves are off. Understood, Admiral. What are our rules of engagement? RO is simple. Bring Council Prime Sethek to face trial for murder by any means necessary. If he resists or attempts to flee, you are authorized to use lethal force. Sarah felt a cold satisfaction settle in her chest. What about Galactic law? Diplomatic immunity? Admiral Reeves' expression hardened. Ambassador, they murdered an American child. Diplomatic immunity doesn't cover acts of terrorism. As far as Earth is concerned, Sethek is a war criminal. The transmission ended, leaving the intelligence center in silence. Finally, Webb spoke. Colonel, what's the tactical situation? Sethek is currently in his private quarters on level 5 of the station. Saurian security detail of 6 guards. The main challenge is extracting him without triggering a diplomatic incident with other Council species. How do we minimize collateral damage? We don't announce our intentions until after we have him in custody. Quick, clean, professional. Colonel Harrison pulled up the station schematics. Sergeant, I'm putting you in charge of the extraction team. Sarah stepped forward. I'm going with them. Ambassador, that's not advisable. This is a military operation. Colonel. Sarah's voice carried an edge that made everyone in the room take notice. Council Prime Sethek ordered my daughter's murder. I'm not sitting on the sidelines while you arrest him. Webb considered this. Ma'am, I understand your need to be there, but combat operations. Sergeant, I'm not asking for permission. I'm informing you that I'll be present when you arrest the creature that killed Emma. Colonel Harrison and Webb exchanged another look. Finally, the colonel nodded. You stay behind our people at all times. No exceptions. 20 minutes later, Sarah found herself wearing borrowed body armor and following Webb through the station service corridors. The extraction team consisted of 6 Marines, all moving with the fluid precision of professionals who had done this before. Target is in his quarters, Webb whispered into his comm. Saurian guards are at standard positions. Ambassador, remember the plan. We go in fast. Secure Sethek and extract before anyone can organize a response. They reached the service access point closest to level 5. Webb's team had bypassed the station's security systems, giving them temporary invisibility on the internal sensors. Sarah felt her heart racing as they approached the Saurian delegation's quarters. Webb held up his hand, signaling for the team to stop. Through his tactical scope, he could see the guards outside Sethek's door. Large, heavily armed Saurians in ceremonial armor that was nonetheless functional. Team Alpha moved to secondary positions. Team Beta, prepare for breach. Webb's voice was calm, professional. Remember, we want Sethek alive. Everyone else is fair game if they resist. The corridor erupted into controlled chaos. The Marines moved like a precision instrument, covering angles and eliminating threats with surgical efficiency. The Saurian guards were skilled, but they were facing humans who had been bred for war. Within 30 seconds, it was over. 4 guards were down, 2 had surrendered, and the door to Sethek's quarters was breached. Sarah followed the team inside to find Council Prime Sethek cowering behind an overturned table. The Saurian's scales had gone pale with fear, and his forked tongue flicked rapidly between his lips. What is the meaning of this intrusion? He hissed. I demand to speak with station security. Webb stepped forward, his weapon trained on the Council Prime. Sethek, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, ordering the assassination of Emma Chen and acts of terrorism against United States citizens. This is outrageous. I have diplomatic immunity. You cannot. Immunity doesn't cover murdering children, Sarah said, stepping out from behind the Marines. Sethek's vertical pupils dilated as he saw her. Ambassador Chen, I offer my deepest condolences for your tragic loss, but surely you cannot believe. I can believe the intercepted communications where you authorized Operation Severance. Sarah interrupted. I can believe Dr. Yisthak's confession that he was following your orders, and I can believe that you ordered my daughter's death to prevent human membership in the Council. Sethek's membrane flicked across his eyes. Those communications are classified Saurian military documents. You had no right to intercept them. You had no right to murder my daughter. Webb gestured to his team. Secure the prisoner. Full restraints. As the Marines moved to arrest him, Sethek drew himself up to his full height. You are making a grave error, humans. The Saurian Empire will not tolerate this treatment of its highest officials. There will be consequences for this action. There already have been consequences, Sarah said coldly. A 7-year-old girl is dead because of your political ambitions. One child's life is a small price for maintaining galactic stability. Your species is too dangerous to be allowed into civilized space. The corridor fell silent. Every Marine stared at Sethek with expressions that made Sarah glad they were on her side. Webb's voice was deadly quiet. Did you just say murdering a child was acceptable? Sethek seemed to realize he had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. That is not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant, Sarah said. You ordered Emma's death because you thought one dead human child was an acceptable cost for keeping us out of the council. Webb activated his communicator. Colonel Harrison, target is secured. We're bringing him aboard. As they escorted Sethek through the corridors, they passed dozens of shocked alien delegates. Word was spreading rapidly through the station that humans had arrested the Council Prime of a major galactic power. This will mean war, Sethek hissed as they reached the docking bay. The Saurian Empire has fleets that could destroy your primitive world. Sarah stopped walking and turned to face him. Council Prime, let me explain something about human nature that obviously wasn't in your intelligence files. She stepped closer, her voice carrying clearly through the docking bay. You declared war on humanity the moment you ordered my daughter's murder. The only question now is whether you want to face trial for your crimes, or whether you want to find out what happens when humans stop trying to be civilized. Sethek's scales rippled with fear as he met her gaze. For the first time since his arrest, he seemed to understand the magnitude of what he had unleashed. The Saurian Empire, he began, will have to decide whether protecting a child killer is worth fighting a species that conquered its own planet through 10,000 years of continuous warfare. Webb finished. As they boarded the shuttle back to the Retribution, Sarah felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. Justice for Emma was finally beginning, but she had a feeling this was only the first act in a much larger drama. The Galactic Council was about to learn what humans meant when they said, justice for all. The Galactic Council emergency session convened 6 hours after Sethek's arrest. Sarah stood in the observer's gallery aboard the Retribution, watching the proceedings through the ship's intelligence feeds. The council chamber was in chaos, with delegates from dozens of species arguing in multiple languages. Senator Thexan struggled to maintain order. Honored delegates, we must address this unprecedented situation with calm deliberation. Calm? The Altarian representative's translator crackled with indignation. Human military forces have invaded council territory and kidnapped a sitting council prime. This is an act of war. It's an act of justice, came a new voice. Sarah recognized Admiral Reeves as she entered the chamber, flanked by 2 Marine guards. She wore her full-dress uniform, every medal and decoration gleaming under the chamber's lights. The chamber fell silent. This was the first time in galactic history that a non-member species had addressed the full council during an emergency session. Senator Thexan's forearms gestured nervously. Admiral Reeves, your presence here is highly irregular. Earth does not have speaking privileges in this chamber. Article 12 of the Galactic Criminal. Justice Accord grants any species the right to address the council when their citizens are victims of state-sponsored terrorism. Admiral Reeves's voice carried across the chamber with military precision. Council Prime Sethek ordered the murder of a 7-year-old American citizen to influence diplomatic proceedings. That's terrorism by any definition. The Saurian interim representative, a young female named Sisera, rose from her delegation's section. These accusations are completely unfounded. The humans have fabricated evidence to justify their illegal actions. Admiral Reeves activated a holographic display showing the intercepted communications. These are genuine Saurian military transmissions. They detail Operation Severance, the planned assassination of Emma Chen, authorized by Council Prime Sethek himself. The chamber erupted again. Several delegates demanded to examine the evidence, while others questioned its authenticity. Through it all, Admiral Reeves stood calm and composed, letting the aliens argue among themselves. The evidence will be independently verified, she continued when the noise died down. But regardless of what you decide here, Council Prime, Sethek will face trial for murder on Earth. We have jurisdiction under the same interstellar law that allows you to arrest our citizens in Council space. Sarah watched the delegates' reactions carefully. Some seemed genuinely shocked by the evidence. Others appeared more concerned about the precedent of humans acting unilaterally. But all of them understood that the galaxy had fundamentally changed in the past few hours. The Zephyrian representative's translator produced musical tones. Admiral Reeves, the Zephyrian collective condemns the murder of an innocent child. However, your military's actions threaten the stability of interstellar law. What guarantee do we have that Earth won't use force against other council members? The same guarantee you've always had, Admiral Reeves replied. We follow the same laws we expect others to follow. But when someone murders our children for political gain, they cross a line that has consequences. Are you threatening the council? Sisera demanded. Admiral Reeves turned to face the Saurian delegation. Representative Sisera, I'm explaining reality. Your government ordered the assassination of a child to prevent human membership in this council. They succeeded. Emma Chen is dead, and humanity's application is clearly going nowhere. The chamber fell silent. Sarah felt tears threatening as the Admiral's words hit home. Emma's death had accomplished exactly what Sethek intended. But, Admiral Reeves continued, you've also shown us something important about how galactic politics really work. You've taught us that the Council tolerates murdering children when it's politically convenient. That's not true, Senator Thexan protested. The Council would never condone such actions. Then prove it, Admiral Reeves challenged. Council Prime Sethek is in human custody, facing trial for ordering a child's murder. Will you demand his release? Will you impose sanctions on Earth for arresting a terrorist? Or will you stand with us in condemning the murder of innocents? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah realized this was a pivotal moment not just for humanity, but for the entire galactic community. How they responded would define the Council's moral character for generations. The Delphini representative's aquatic translator produced bubbling sounds. The Delphini Oceanic Union requests clarification. What exactly is Earth's position regarding Council membership? Admiral Reeves smiled grimly. Earth withdraws its application for Council membership, effective immediately. The chamber exploded in shocked voices. Sarah felt her heart sink even as she understood the strategic brilliance of the decision. However, Admiral Reeves raised her voice above the chaos. Earth offers a new proposal. We establish a competing organization, a true alliance of democratic worlds based on principles of justice, equality, and the protection of innocence. She activated another display showing star charts. 17 species have already expressed interest in joining such an alliance. The Centauri Republic, the Altarian Democracy, the Zephyrian Collective, and others who share our values. Sarah watched the faces of various delegates. Several were nodding thoughtfully. Others looked horrified at the idea of the galactic community fracturing. You're talking about splitting the galaxy, Senator Thexan said. Quietly, I'm talking about offering an alternative to a system that tolerates child murder for political gain. Admiral Reeves deactivated her displays. The choice is yours. You can continue to operate under the current system, where might makes right and innocents are expendable, or you can join us in building something better. The Saurian representative stood angrily. This is blackmail. You're trying to destroy the Galactic Council because we wouldn't accept your primitive species. Representative Sisera. Admiral Reeves's voice turned ice cold. Your government murdered a 7-year-old girl. The only primitive species in this chamber is the one that thinks that's acceptable. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah could see delegates throughout the chamber, processing the implications of what they'd just heard. The old order was crumbling and everyone knew it. Senator Thexan finally found his voice. Admiral Reeves, surely there's a way to resolve this without fracturing the galactic community. Perhaps if the Saurian Empire offered appropriate reparations. Senator, with respect, you can't pay reparations for a murdered child. There's no price that makes Emma's death acceptable. Admiral Reeves gathered her materials. Earth will proceed with the trial of Council Prime Sethek under our laws. Any species that wishes to observe the proceedings is welcome. Any species that wishes to join our new alliance is welcome. And any species that believes murdering children is acceptable, political strategy is not. As Admiral Reeves left the chamber, Sarah felt a complex mixture of emotions. Emma's death had been avenged, but at the cost of humanity's galactic ambitions. Or had it? Perhaps this new path was better than joining a council that tolerated child murder. Back aboard the Retribution, she found Admiral Reeves in the conference room with Colonel Harrison and Webb. "Admiral, was any of that planned?" Sarah asked. "The alliance proposal? We've been developing that option for months, ever since it became clear that certain council factions would never accept human membership." Admiral Reeves's expression softened. "But Ambassador, I want you to know that everything we're doing now is because of Emma. Her death changed everything." "How so?" "It showed us the Council's true nature. They might condemn Sethic's actions publicly, but they'll never actually punish him. They care more about maintaining their power structure than protecting innocents." The Admiral activated a display showing communication logs. "In the past 6 hours, we've received formal requests from 23 species asking about Alliance membership. Emma's death has become a rallying cry for every species that's tired of the Council's corruption." Sarah felt tears finally coming. She wanted to go home. That's all she ever wanted. Webb stepped forward. "Ma'am, if I may, Emma's death is bringing about the kind of galactic change that will ensure no other child dies for political gain." "That's a hell of a legacy for a 7-year-old. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. "What happens to Sethic now?" "He faces trial on Earth," Admiral Reeves said firmly. "Full due process, everything by the book. We'll prove that humans can deliver justice without becoming the monsters others claim we are." "And if the Saurian Empire retaliates?" Colonel Harrison spoke up. "Ma'am, we've got 30 ships en route from Earth and another 50 from our new alliance partners. The Saurian Empire has numbers, but they've never faced a united force this determined." Admiral Reeves nodded. "Ambassador, the galaxy is about to learn something about human nature that we've tried to keep hidden. We're not just fighters, we're crusaders. When someone hurts our children, we don't just seek revenge. We reshape the entire world to make sure it never happens again." Sarah looked out at the stars through the conference room's viewport. Somewhere out there, Emma's body was being prepared for transport back to Earth. But her daughter's death had lit a fire that would burn across the galaxy. The Galactic Council had wanted to keep humanity out of civilized space. Instead, they'd given humanity a reason to 6 months later, Sarah stood in the International Court of Justice in The Hague, watching as Council Prime Sethic was led into the defendant's dock. The Saurian looked smaller somehow, his scales dull and his movements uncertain. House arrest on Earth had not been kind to him. The courtroom was packed with representatives from across the galaxy. What had begun as the trial of a child killer had become the most watched legal proceeding in interstellar history. The verdict would set precedents that would echo across space for generations. Judge Elizabeth Morrison, a stern woman with 30 years of international law experience, called the court to order. "The International Criminal Court will now hear the case of Earth versus Sethic regarding charges of conspiracy to commit murder, ordering the assassination of Emma Chen, and acts of terrorism against civilian populations." The prosecution was led by David Chen, Sarah's brother and one of Earth's most skilled prosecutors. He had volunteered for the case, saying that family should seek justice for family. "Your Honor," David began, "the evidence will show that the defendant, acting in his official capacity as Council Prime of the Saurian Empire, deliberately ordered the murder of 7-year-old Emma Chen to influence diplomatic proceedings. This was not a crime of passion or a military action against combatants. This was the calculated assassination of an innocent child for political gain." Sethic's defense attorney, ironically a human rights lawyer named Janet Williams, stood to respond. "Your Honor, while we acknowledge the tragedy of Emma Chen's death, my client maintains his innocence. The prosecution's case relies heavily on intercepted communications that cannot be independently verified, and testimony from Dr. Isthak, who has clear incentives to implicate my client." Sarah watched from the gallery as the trial unfolded. The prosecution methodically presented the evidence, the intercepted communications, Dr. Isthak's confession, the forensic analysis of the neurotoxin, the timeline of events. Each piece of evidence was carefully examined and cross-examined by both sides. On the third day, Dr. Isthak took the stand. The Saurian scientist had aged visibly during his imprisonment, his scales now permanently pale with stress. "Dr. Isthak," David Chen asked, Did Council Prime Seth order you to create a toxin specifically designed to kill human children? Yes. Dr. Yisithak's voice was barely a whisper. He said the humans must be stopped at any cost, that their admission to the Council would destabilize galactic order. And did you create this toxin? Yes. I synthesized a neurotoxin that would target human neural pathways. It was designed to be undetectable and untraceable. How did you introduce this toxin to Emma Chen? Dr. Yisithak's membrane flicked across his eyes. I placed it in the nutritional supplement added to her lunch meal. The dosage was calculated to cause death within 6 hours. Sarah felt the courtroom's collective intake of breath. Hearing the clinical details of her daughter's murder was almost unbearable, but she forced herself to listen. Emma deserved to have her story told completely. Why did you target Emma Chen specifically? David asked. Council Prime Sethek said that killing the ambassador's child would be more effective than killing the ambassador herself. It would traumatize the human delegation while avoiding direct diplomatic retaliation. Did you have any reservations about murdering a child? Dr. Isthak was silent for a long moment. I told myself it was for the greater good, that preventing human membership in the council was worth any price. And now I realize I was a fool. There is no greater good that justifies murdering an innocent child. When Sethek himself took the stand, his demeanor was very different from the broken scientist. He remained defiant, claiming innocence despite the overwhelming evidence. I categorically deny ordering any assassination, he hissed when questioned. These communications are fabrications, designed to frame me for crimes I did not commit. David Chen activated a holographic display showing the intercepted transmissions. Council Prime, these communications were sent using your personal encryption codes from your private terminal. How do you explain that? My codes were obviously compromised by human intelligence operatives. Are you saying Earth's intelligence services are sophisticated enough to break Saurian military encryption? Sethek's pupils dilated as he realized the trap. That is not what I meant. Council Prime, you've spent 3 years arguing that humans are too primitive for galactic civilization. Now you're claiming we're advanced enough to frame you for murder using your own military encryption. Which is it? The contradiction hung in the air as Sethek struggled to respond. His defense began to crumble under the weight of his own prejudices. On the final day of testimony, Sarah took the stand. She had dreaded this moment, but she knew Emma's story needed to be told by someone who loved her. Ambassador Chen, David said gently, please tell the court about your daughter. Sarah took a breath and began to speak. She told them about Emma's curiosity, her love of drawing, her excitement about seeing new worlds. She described her daughter's last day, her questions about going home, her innocent trust in the beings around her. Emma believed in the best of everyone, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her tears. She saw the beauty in alien cultures, the wonder in strange new worlds. She was exactly the kind of child who could have grown up to bridge the gaps between species. What impact has her death had on you personally? It's destroyed something fundamental in how I see the universe. Emma represented hope. Hope that different species could understand each other, that we could build something better together. Her murder showed me that some beings see children as acceptable casualties in their political games. During cross-examination, Janet Williams tried to be gentle but thorough. Ambassador Chen, isn't it possible that your grief has colored your interpretation of events? That you're seeing conspiracy where there might only be tragic coincidence? Sarah met her gaze directly. Ms. Williams, I wish that were true. I wish Emma's death was random, senseless, but ultimately meaningless in the larger scheme of things. But the evidence shows it was deliberate, calculated, and ordered by the defendant for political gain. Doesn't the possibility of error concern you? What if Council Prime Sethek is innocent? Then an innocent being will go free and the real killer will still be out there. But the evidence doesn't support that possibility. When closing arguments concluded, Judge Morrison retired to consider her verdict. The wait lasted 3 days, during which the galaxy held its breath. The Alliance of Democratic Worlds had grown to 37 member species, while the traditional Galactic Council struggled with internal divisions. When court reconvened, Judge Morrison's expression was grave. In the matter of Earth versus Sethek, this court finds the defendant guilty on all charges. The courtroom erupted. Alien delegates shouted in multiple languages while reporters rushed to file their stories. Sarah felt a profound sense of relief wash over her. Justice for Emma at last. The evidence presented was overwhelming, Judge Morrison continued when order was restored. The defendant, acting in his official capacity, ordered the assassination of an innocent child to achieve political objectives. This court sentences Counsel Prime Sethek to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. As Sethek was led away, his defiance finally broke. "You don't understand what you've done," he screamed. "You've destroyed galactic order. The chaos that follows will be on your heads." Sarah stood and faced him directly. "Counsel Prime, the only thing we've destroyed is the idea that murdering children is acceptable politics. If that destroys your galactic order, then it needed to be destroyed." Outside the courthouse, Admiral Reeves waited with news. "Ambassador, I thought you should know. The Galactic Council voted this morning to formally condemn Sethek's actions and accept the court's verdict. They're also requesting to join the Alliance of Democratic Worlds." Sarah looked up at the sky, where the lights of orbital stations marked humanity's growing presence among the stars. "What about the Saurian Empire?" "Their new government has formally apologized for Sethek's crimes and requested to join the alliance as well. It seems Emma's death accomplished something Sethek never intended. It united the galaxy around principles of justice and protection of innocence." 3 days later, Sarah stood in a small cemetery in Virginia, placing flowers on Emma's grave. The headstone read, "Emma Chen, age 7, beloved daughter, bridge between worlds. I kept my promise, baby," Sarah whispered. "We came home, and we brought everyone with us." Behind her, delegates from 43 different worlds stood in respectful silence. They had come to pay their respects to the child whose death had changed the galaxy. Representatives of species that had never before cooperated were now working together in Emma's name. As Sarah walked away from the grave, she felt Emma's presence somehow, carried in the hope of a better universe. Her daughter had wanted to go home, and in death she had shown the way for everyone. The galaxy Emma left behind was kinder, more just, and more united than the one she had been born into. It was a legacy that would honor her memory for generations to come. In the end, the Galactic Council had been right about one thing. Humans were dangerous. Not because they were violent, but because when someone hurt their children, they refused to rest until they had reshaped the entire universe.